Word. All right, so hi, we are in 106B, tapered cuts and fades. Lugo, where's your face at? Put your face in there. Okay, I got to see your face. So tapers, fades, those kind of things, right? It gets confusing. Because someone's going to say, oh, you got a drop fade, a mid fade, a this fade, a that fade. Oh, that's a taper. Oh, that's a fade. Oh, that's a this. Oh, that's a that. So let me tell you what the book says about this. Our book, this book right here, this book says, tapered cuts and fades can be similar. However, tapered cuts are generally a little bit longer and have defined outlines around the ears and at the side nape hairline. Fades seem to just do that, fade into the skin and around the entire exterior hairline, including around the ears. Whether you're creating a tapered cut or a fade, it all leads back to understanding gradation and the varying degrees of transparency or scalp exposure that can be achieved. So yeah, people are going to call it all kinds of different names. You may even have names, and there's been many arguments over what's a taper and what's a fade and what's this and what's that going on around there. But remember, it all goes back to the transparency or how much scalp that you can see along the head. Whether you're going to, hey, turn your camera on. Whether you're going to call it a taper or call it a fade. Okay, so comes down to that. The way this book is saying it is that if you're going to call it a fade, then you're not going to have any definition around the hairline. It's just going to go from like no hair up into hair. That would be a fade. If you're going to call it a taper, then you can have more of maybe, you know, a line on the side or a definition around the hairline where the sideburns are. And that's what this book is saying. And this is what the book you need to pass your test.
Is that for the shaving?
The book you need to pass state board. So got this. No, we already finished shaving. We are in taper cuts and fades. Okay, so let me get the slides up. So hold on a second here. So here's what we got. This is what we're going to go on here. Gradation, taper cushion. And remember, there's 100 different techniques out there, but you got to know the basics first before you can figure out which technique works best for you. Okay. So this is what they're saying here, the low taper cut. That you're going to find definite outlines around the ears and the sides, where a fade is just going to fade up into nothing, or fade up and from nothing into hair. All right, so this is pronounced gradation. Looks like graduation. It's in the longer haircuts, except there's no U, right? So now it becomes gradation. It's a very short version of graduation. Lengths increase from shortest along the hairline to longer toward the interior. So when you hear gradation, that's what this means. This is what tapers and fades are. So you can use overcomb techniques for hair that's too short for you to control with your fingers. You can use the sculpting procedures of part, distribute, and project are probably not going to work for you. Okay. Sometimes a freehand technique is used to create this gradation. And sometimes tapering and gradation create a shape that contours or tapers the exterior. And depending on the client's hair density and growth patterns and color, some shorter hairstyles will cause the hair to lift up and expose the scalp, which is going to make it look like, you know, it's like baldish a little bit. Or it's going to show a lot of transparency. Okay, transparency is a word you're going to hear, which definitely just means how much scalp do you see? Okay, How much scalp do you see? And how did that line get marked right there? Who did you guys do that line? Did I do that line? Let's see. Nope, it's gone. You guys did it. Okay. So here's some facts about gradation. The shorter the gradation, the more transparency you're going to see, right? The line of inclination is that line of progression as it fades up or tapers up. That line that it goes by is called the line of inclination. If you're using an overcomb technique, instead of putting like a number 2 on it and following the head shape, if you're just going over comb, the angle of the comb is what gives you the length of the hair, right? So the angle of the comb relative to the shape of the head establishes the line of inclination. So that means how far away are you holding the comb from the head? And doing that consistently all the way around the head, it's some challenges in there to try to get the same length on the right side that's on the left side, holding it at the same angle. But when they talk about this gradation, they talk about 3 different ones: low, medium, and high. So when we're starting with low gradation, so the line of inclination moves really fast away from the head. So this is probably done from like the occipital bone down, or maybe even below, yeah, a little bit lower, just in the nape area, right? This is going to give you the least amount of transparency. So this is where you'd see just on that back neckline, you would see the taper going on there. When you have medium gradation, this is where the line of inclination moves closer to the head as it increases. So this is a little bit higher. This is the medium amount of transparency. Let me help this poor girl again. She keeps coming into this class. So this is going to be sort of like a medium one there, where you're going to get a little bit farther up the back. That's going to give you more transparency. You're going to see more of that. And then when we get to the high gradation, this is where it's going to get real close to the hair. This is where you're going to see a lot of scalp, maximum transparency. When you get through there, you're going to see a lot more than what you would say versus low. It's going to look more like a high fade by the time you get done with the high gradation. Okay, so the line of inclination is the angle at which the gradation processes or progresses in length. So is it going short, 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 and then longer, or is it just going short to long? I mean, which angle are we going to in this short to long hair? That's what we're gonna need to know. So the higher of line of inclination, the closer the comb is to the head, reduces or results with shorter length. Longer hair is going to give us longer lengths. Okay, yeah, that's the cause and effect there, right? The higher the line, the closer the comb travels. The shorter the result of the hair lengths, the more transparency is created. That should make pretty much good sense, right? So the transparency is created when short links stand out from the head and expose at the scalp. So if you are doing this and it looks uneven, the color of the hair looks uneven, you're going to have uneven lengths. Or it could come from changes of hair density or growth patterns, especially in the nape area that had, or his hair like blocked off or straight across or squared off. It would have to be a pretty high neckline, and you would be cutting into his actual hairline, which is something you don't want to do because maintenance on that is terrible. Plus it would look kind of funny if it was up that high. So by tapering his neckline, it's probably a better choice for the type of hairline that he has. So what we need to look for is that before we even start this, is check out the hairline. What kind of growth pattern do they have in their nape area? An illusion of transparency results is identified by lighter hair colors or hair texture exposure. So when we talk about taper cuts or tapered cut, you know that word taper, that word gets thrown out a lot. People are talking about haircuts. People come in with hair like mine are like, yeah, hey, I want my hair tapered. You know, when you hear that, a lot of people think, you know, short haircuts, but that's not always necessarily true. If we look about what this is tapering, it's shorter to longer, right? That's basically what the taper means. It just happens to be gradation short on these shorter hairstyles. But it is a well-blended cut, shortest links at the nape and side perimeter hairline, progressively longer towards the crown and top of the head, conforms to the curve of the head in the exterior, right? So that's in the back or around the sides here, in the back, whatever's exiting that ball cap at your exterior. Nape hairlines may be natural or cut to a more defined line, which means, are you tapering the bottom of the neckline there, or are you blocking it off? No weight lines. And if it does have a weight area, it's going to be above the crest. So what they're saying is if you just did like two just around the edges and then blended it up, you know, it would be a lot longer up in here, and it would probably be done with shears at the top of the head. So when you're doing this transparency, or where the shortest links are going to be, would be the nape and the sideburns. So tapered cuts are popular with short hair, okay? It allows someone to have longer hair on the top, but shorter around the edges, basically, is what they're saying there. Creates interior movement and styling flexibility. So there's many different ways that you could style your hair. So some names used through the year for these haircuts are Ivy League, Princeton, businessman, regular taper, standard taper, natural taper, long, medium, or short taper, low, mid, or high taper. Okay, so we're pretty familiar with low, mid, or high, but Ivy League, Princeton, businessman, regular old man's tapered haircut, regular taper. What you're gonna find, if you look back to like the 1950s, there's posters out there that you can find. We have one on the wall here. You can find them online. I've looked them up several times. And it shows these actual haircuts with Ivy League, Princeton businessmen. There's like flat top with fenders, crew cut, butch. They're all on here, but they're all on this one poster. But you'll find these haircuts. For sure, you'll find these haircuts. So that's always interesting, right? I always thought it was interesting. I liked to look at the old haircuts because guess what? They're all back in style. It's just that what you're going to find is the styling is going to be different. But the haircuts, you know, but the top is a lot longer. It's actually increased towards the front so that they can comb that back like a pompadour, but it is a low taper. What you're finding there is that you have a lot of styling flexibility. It's a basic cut for a classic look like the pompadour. It creates shape that complements a narrower head shape. So the longer area at the crest, which is the widest part of your head, creates width. And it usually consists of low gradation performed from the nape hairline up to the occipital, which if you look at the side view, yeah, pretty much is a lot shorter at the nape up to the occipital, then it gets longer the rest of the way up. So when we hit this mid taper cut, this is also often considered the classic taper cut. It's ideal for a traditional hairstyle. It's popular with clients who prefer very slick and as well as highly textured looks. It's shorter in length than a low taper cut, usually with less defined weight area due to the line of inclination, and it's cut closer to the head with a medium gradation. And then we're gonna pop up to a high taper cut. So often worn for tight shapes, as well as textured or spiked type hairstyles, shorter in length than a mid taper, more shape and more parallel to the head. Best for clients with good head shapes and usually cut with the high gradation. Now, the names given to haircuts by barbers and consumers vary depending on locations, trends, and even the client's age. Okay, so who's drawing on my screen? Okay. So what's understood by many barbers is a request creates a small amount of transparency at the lower nape hairline and sideburns, as in a tapered haircut. Be sure you understand what the client is asking for when they refer to a cut by a certain name, which is true. If a client comes and says that they want a crew cut.
I can't hear none of that.
Miss Connie, you're breaking up.
I'm breaking up again. Where did you hear?
What?
You're still
Going
breaking
again.
up.
Me?
You sound like a robot.
You need to fix the Wi-Fi. Upgrade to that 5G, yo.
Miss Connie. All right, class, don't worry. I'll take over from here. So.
I'm back. Can you hear me better? I moved. I moved my location, so I got to move this thing now. Can you hear me now? Oh my gosh. Technical difficulties. All right, let's switch this around again. Oh, come on. Okay, so now, did you guys see this slide? Do you remember seeing this slide? I think I was a little bit farther than that, huh? Yeah. Low, medium. Taper. Okay. Okay, so we're on fade. Here we go. So where I left off, as I said, to remember that names given to haircuts by barbers and consumers, which would be your clients, vary depending on location, trends, and even the client's age. This haircut is frequently requested by clients as a taper. What's understood by many barbers is that the request for a short, uniformly layered cut with gradation or tapering creates a small amount of transparency at the lower hairline and sideburns, as in a taper haircut. Okay, be sure you understand what the client is asking for when he refers to a cut by a specific name. So remember that part, because that's important, because we've had many arguments over what a taper and a fade is. So, and that's just what people come up with. And of course, I was told by someone that it's all about me being old that makes the difference. So if I'm the one who thinks, if I think that way, I'm not the only one, obviously, because I learned it from somewhere. Okay, so clients refer to as tapers. Short, uniformly layered haircut with gradation or tapering creates a small amount of transparency at the lower nape hairline and the sideburns. So that's what we're saying. Understand what they're asking for. Okay. So fades, they create a shade effect that shows us a smooth transition or gradient of color from full scalp visibility to no scalp visibility or no transparency. So those all look like fades to me. They all look like zero fades, but you can get a longer version of a fade, right? You don't have to have a zero fade. So what they're saying by this is when they're talking about a low fade, a mid fade, or a high fade, what's the area that makes it from low, medium to high, which would be the temple or the peak point. That's where the difference is. So when you talk about a low fade, notice it's below the temple or the peak point. That makes it a low fade. When they're saying that someone wants a mid fade, that's generally from the temple peak point to the occipital or slightly above. Okay. And when we get to a high fade, it's generally extended from the temple peak point to the crest or slightly above in the back. Now I know when I've talked with people before and they talk about, you know, a low, mid, or a high fade, they always seem to look at the back and the occipital area. That occipital area is your taper. It's not your fade, right? So how far from the sides to the occipital area is it going to be for your low, mid, or high fade? So bald fade. Bald fade, sides are bald. Cut with trimmers, outliners, the bald faders, whichever ones that you want to use. Some, you know, the triple shaver, electric shaver, whichever one you want to call it. But guess what? The hair is bald. How low, how high is the bald? That's up for you to decide during your consultation. I keep getting kicked off back there. So I came over here. I got kicked off like 4 times already. Okay. Skin fades. These are bald fades, but skin fades, bald fades, people use that term interchangeably, right? But the difference between a bald fade and a skin fade is a straight razor. Okay, you're gonna hear people say, oh, I want a bald with a straight razor, you know, I want a skin fade with a straight razor, or whatever they're gonna say. But really a skin fade is with a straight razor that's completely bare. Then we're gonna have a drop fade. This creates a curve or an arc from the temple area through the nape. Transparency occurs wider on the back sides and drops lower towards the hairline. In trendy versions, the amount of transparency may become narrow and pointy in the center back, with the weight right above the faded area. So once you figure out what kind of haircut you're doing, there's some things that are going to give you better results. Like one, work at eye level. And notice that sometimes when you guys have your doll heads, you have a real low or real high. Make it eye level, arm level, right? Check in the mirror. Use that mirror to see what you're looking at. Have good lighting and turn the client to see different areas with similar lighting. Remember that that mirror is for you to use. It's not for your client to sit there and look at what you're doing throughout the whole haircut. You need to be turning them so that you can see exactly what you're looking at. Because when you're standing right there on top of that person, it all looks great. But when you look 3 feet across the room, it doesn't always look so good. So remember that we're going to, we're going to be looking at it from 3 feet away. No one's going to be standing on top of it like you are. So these are the things that we need to really pay attention to. Then we get to outlining. Okay, this is a cutting technique used to define the hairline. Okay, so some guidelines for this is that sideburns influence profile and an overall look. Remember, ears aren't even. So if you're going by the person's face or the person's ears to make your sideburns, usually it looks a little bit more even if you go by their ears. Adapt nape outline shapes to the length and width of the neck. Go with what they have naturally, unless it's really not too good of a shape, but we don't want to cut into that hairline. We want to keep it naturally. Just clean it up. Determine if the front hairline needs to be outlined through the temple to the sides. Don't push or cut the natural front hairline back. And not everyone likes their hairline cut. Not everyone likes the outlining at the hairline. So be sure and ask, especially on some smaller children. But be sure and ask if they'd like that done, because that should be an additional cost. Okay, if you're lining somebody up in the front and they've just paid for a regular haircut, if you're doing a haircut with a lineup and you're going to be using a straight razor and all that, that's an additional cost. They should be paying more for that. It's not just a haircut. Make sure that the tools that you use, they're going to be a little, each trimmer cuts a little different. So whatever you're trying to use, make sure that you've practiced and know what you're doing. Okay. So tapered outline follows the natural neckline, gradually appears or gradually tapers to the neck or the sideburns. Okay. Tapered neck outline is less obvious than a blunt line when hair grows out. Looks neater as it grows out and can give a slimmer appearance to a wide neck. If you have a blunt outline, also known as block, hard lines to follow the natural hairline. It's usually horizontal, not recommended for a wide neck, and will add illusion to the width of a slim neck. Now, when someone says they want a rounded neckline, what you want to do is cut it straight across the back like that. But when you get to those corners, instead of having a square corner, round the corner. Okay. So irregular shapes, straighter lines are give a masculine look, sharper angles give a masculine look, curved lines soften it up, and rounded outline is an alternative for clients who want a blunt hairline. You could round it. And then if you're going to do hair graphics or a hard part, right? Hard parts are usually cut on the side, and it is exaggerated of a regular side part, creates a constant and neat, clean look. Like hair graphics, hard parts can also be used using trimmers or a straight razor. A hard part is added to many haircuts, including undercuts, fades, and comb overs. I'm actually going to give my grandson a little comb over with the hard part. He's 11 now. He just needs something different than a shaved head. If we're going to be doing hair graphics, these create.
You shave your grandson's head?
I used to shave it with a 2 on the, or 4 on the top and 2 on the sides, but now that he's gotten a little bit older and we've let it grow for a long time, and he's going to be going to school here on the 30th. I'm going to cut the sides down still with the 2, but the front's long enough to kind of come over to the side. So I'm going to give him a little hard part so that he can wear his hair like that to school. He needs a little bit more of a grown-up style, I guess. So hair graphics are usually exposed to the scalp, their designs. You can go from carved parts to complex patterns, just to straight lines. Hair graphic is art. I mean, you got to be able to like draw on the head. I went to a hair show one time and I watched this guy in a barber competition put the Last Supper on the back of this guy's head. Man, it was unbelievable. This other guy did like a beach scene with like a sunset and the birds flying and the waves rolling and everything else on the back of this guy's head. It was amazing. It was really good. I like that a lot. It was cool. Okay. So we get to facial hair. So you got a client wears a beard, right? Some of them want it to blend into their sideburns. Some of them want to have it like faded up or faded down. however you put it in there, make sure that it works with the type of haircut that they have. Right. Same technique you use to cut the sides of the hair, you use to cut the sideburns. That way it matches, or connect or disconnect the beard, whichever way you're trying to go. Oh, here we go. 3 main types of gradation that are identified by where the gradation is performed are short, mid, and long. That's true or false?
True.
True or false? The line of inclination is the angle at which the gradation progresses in length.
True.
Okay. A well-blended cut that positions the shortest links at the nape and side perimeter hairline is what? The shortest lengths at the
It's
nape.
tapered cuts.
Okay. The goal of a fade is to create a shape effect that shows a smooth transition from full scalp visibility to no scalp visibility and no, pretty sure that's weight. Low fades generally extend from below the temple peak point to below the,
Nape.
I'd say occipital, probably is occipital. The type of fade that creates an arc or curved fade line from the temple area through the nape is that's probably do you know, Alejandro? No, I'm going to say it's a drop fade. The shape and length of the sideburns influence not only the profile, but the, ooh, that's a tricky one. Hair graphics are creative lines and shapes etched out or cut into the hair, usually exposing the what?
The scalp.
Yeah. Oh, so the first one is false. True. Transparency. Oh, transparency. Tapered cut. Oh, transparency again. I guess they want us to use that word transparency, huh? Occipital, drop fade, overall look, scalp. Okay, so gradation, a very short version of graduation in which lengths increase from shortest along the hairline to longer toward the interior. 3 types of gradation, main types anyway, low, medium, and high. Oh, that question said long, that's why it was false. When very short links stand out from the scalp, they become more visible, which creates transparency or the illusion of a lighter hair color. And that's another thing too with hair color. If you have someone that has like blonde hair and someone that has brown hair, and you do a number 2 on them, the blonde's going to look shorter. With tapered cuts or with a taper or taper cuts, it is well blended cut that positions the shortest links at the nape and side perimeter hairline and gets progressively longer toward the crown and top of the head. There's 3 types of tapered cuts. Low tapered, mid tapered, high tapered. A fade is an ultra short version of gradation with high degree of transparency and complete scalp or skin exposure around the hairline. 3 standard fades. Low fade, which generally extends from below the temple peak to the point below the occipital. Mid fade from the temple peak point to the occipital or slightly above, and a high fade from the temple peak point to the crest or slightly above in the back. Outlining is a cutting technique used to define the hairline. The outline of a cut is detail that makes a big difference to the final look and maybe a sharp, crisp line or a softer, tapered line. And hair graphics are creative lines and shapes etched or cut into the hair, usually exposing the scalp. Hard parts are usually cut on one side and are an exaggeration of a regular side part. Facial hair transition from a haircut to facial hair at the sideburns is critical to the success of the overall look. In general, the technique used to cut the sides and sideburns is the same technique used to connect the beard.
Facts.
That's that part that you need to know. Now remember, on Thursday, we're having our shaving test. And then on Saturday, depending on how many clients we have, we may be having a practical shaving test. But that's up for, see how many clients we have. Okay, so now we're going to go into tools and essentials and how they would be usable. Okay, so really important for you to become familiar with clippers, trimmers, electric shavers, taper cuts, and fades, right? So here's some things we need to know about them. First of all, let's talk about motors. Motors are going to make a difference, right? A lot of clipper work doing these types of haircuts. Barbers appreciate clippers that get the job done the way they want it done and the amount of time they want it done with the right amount of torque, weight, and durability. And the right blade. Blade makes a big difference too. But the first thing we're going to talk about is motors. Okay. You have magnetic motors, pivotal motors, and rotary motors. Okay, so these magnetic motors, they're known as vibratory. They're recommended for fine to medium textures. Usually not too much wet hair, not like really soaking wet. I like damp hair would be okay, but not really, really wet hair. Okay. Pivotal motors, they're recommended for coarse textures, thick, heavy, density. Rotary motors are known as the universal, and you can use all types of textures of hair for that. And you can even use it a little bit wet. Magnetic, you want the hair as dry as possible. Pivotal ones, you kind of want, let's just go by this. So magnetic, blade speed on this is high. The blade is pulled in one direction by electromagnet, returned by spring action. Gives you smooth cutting, creates heat, good for occasional use. So this clippers that you use, you're like, oh, my clippers are getting hot. When you use them a lot, those are magnetic. Most of them are kind of like magnetic motors. Cutting on dry and finer hair, because sometimes if you do it with real thick hair, it kind of seems like it bogs down a little bit. And the texture type would be a fine to a medium texture. If you have a pivotal motor, you have a high cutting power with those. The lower blade is pulled in both directions. It runs quieter. It does run cooler. It's for cutting dry and damp hair, and it's a little bit better for coarser textures and thick and heavy densities. If you have a rotary motor, the cutting power on that's really high. The blade moves from side to side in a rotary motion, runs quiet, it's really heavy duty. Most of the rotary motors are going to be the ones that have the detachable blades. So instead of putting a guard on it, you're going to actually take the whole blade off and put it back on, like the Oster 76. That would be known as a rotary one. I know Andis makes one. I think it's the BGR or something like that. I know it has a BG in it somewhere. That's going to be their rotary blade one. And Wall makes one too, but it's not, I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. A lot of the Andis clippers do run off of magnetic and pivotal motors, and a lot of the Wall clippers are just magnetic, if that helps you at all. With the rotary ones, it's for cutting dry, wet, damp, bulk cutting, all textures. It seems to work the best for all hair textures. They're just a little bit different to use than what we're used to. Okay. So when you're going to be buying some clippers, some of the things that you want to look for is the durability. How does it feel in your hand? Is it quiet? Is it efficient? How cool does it stay? And then optimal blade performance and what purpose is it made for? And you'll find clippers out there that are just balding. They don't have an adjustable lever on the side. And then the blades, but we'll go over the blades probably tomorrow because I don't know if we're going to have enough time to do that today, but we'll see. Okay. Adjustable and detachable blade clippers. Okay, those are the categories of clippers that they have. So adjustable blade clippers are going to have that little lever on the side. The lever moves the stationary blade closer or farther from the cutting blade. The adjustable blade clippers can adjust from about a 0.5 millimeter to the closest cut to about a 2.5 millimeter for cutting less hair. And I can't even tell you how much of an inch is a 0.5 millimeter. Well, let's find out. I'll ask Google. 0.5 millimeter is how much of an inch? So it is 0.0197 of an inch is 0.5 millimeter. How much is 2.5 millimeter to an inch? And the 2.5 millimeter is 0.0984 of an inch. So that's when you put that guard on and you adjust it or you close it and they call it a half. Okay. Some adjustable clippers used for close fading will allow you to cut even closer, depending on if you've zero gapped them or not. And attachment combs or guards can be added for additional length and differ between manufacturers. So you will find that, you know, because they come in wall 1 through 8, you may find in a different manufacturer, actually, I think Wall's made them a little bit different now too, because they did come out with a half and a 1.5. So it could be just a little different in that. The detachable blade clippers now, what they're going to have is the actual blade that can be removed. It's all metal. So I kind of think that I personally think that they cut a little bit better than with the plastic guards over the top of them, because there's no little plastic lip there where you've placed the guard on to hold it to where you have to keep going over it and over it again. These are designed to use quick without using tools and replace it. You just replace the blade. Blade sizes do differ between manufacturers, but these blades come, let's see, Oster and Andis ones are interchangeable. If you have the Oster 76s and the Andis BGR, BRG, whatever they're called, I can't remember, the blades will actually fit on both clippers. So when you go to get them, they start at like 5 zeros. They go to 4 zeros, 3 zeros, and then you have a 0A, and then you have a 1, you have a 1A, a 1.5, a 2, a 3.5, a 3 3/4, and a 5/8. So when you put the 5/8 on the detachable blade on your clipper and you cut with it, it cuts about the same size as a 4 in a plastic blade. Which if you look at our 4s in the plastic blades, it says it's a 1/2 inch. So they do vary a little bit depending on the manufacturer and the type of blade. So that's just knowing your product. That's just knowing what you're using on the difference on how it cuts. But you have a lot more blade sizes in detachable blades. So blending does become a lot easier because you don't have to mess with the adjustable part or try to keep changing the guards and going over it. You just use the blade and it does work a lot. Well, I think it works better. You can do clipper over comb work with lots of different hair textures. They even have texturizing blades. So instead of using thinning shears to do your texturizing with, you can actually do it with a blade on detachable blade clippers. They work good for lots of different things. They are different to use though than what we're probably used to, because I know when I first started using them, I had to like learn how. It was a little bit different. But you can do a lot of different things with them. These clipper guards go on adjustable blade clippers. The number correlates to hair length. So if you're using your little lever on the side to adjust it, you can change that just a little bit more too. So they go from 1/16 to 1 inch, which is like the 0 to 1 inch. And they go in 1/8 inch increments. So you're looking at, 1/16. Let's see, you got 1/8, 1/4, 1 is 1/8, 2 is 1/4, 3 is 3/8, 4 is 1/2, 5 is 5/8, 6 is 3/4, 7 is 7/8, and then 8 is 1. So you should probably know that, because if you got to sit there and look for the number when somebody asks you how long, someone says, hey, how long is a number 2? If you can't just be like, oh, a number 2 is 1/4 of an inch, you need to memorize that stuff. Someone goes, oh, how long is number 4? You should be able to say a number 4 is 1/2 an inch. You should know that. I'm not even going to say that you should memorize that. I'm going to say memorize that. You need to know that. If you have to sit there and go through every single clipper guard just to tell your client like, oh yeah, it's this number, you should know that. So clipper brushes used to remove hair debris. Okay, nylon bristles so that you can disinfect them. They need to be put in disinfectant solution. Same thing goes for those brushes that you use on the side of the head to wipe the clippings off so you can see your lines. Make sure that it's only used one time and that it can be put into the disinfectant solution. Now you can use it multiple times on the same client, but it's only a one client use. Okay, but you want the clipper brush because you want to be able to brush the hair off and you want to be able to disinfect it for sure. So when we go into the different types of clippers, we have them for tapering, we have them for fading, and we have them for balding. And I'm sure that there's many other types of, or a few other types of clippers out there by now. So hold on a second. Let me get this blade thing up really quick. This won't take me but a minute to pull this up before we finish today, and then we can just start with these different clippers tomorrow. Let me share this with you. No, but it's not in that one. Sorry. Maybe I have it in this one over here. Let's see. Yes, wow, oh, a little violent. Hold on, I'm trying to open this. Well, I couldn't get it to open, so I'll have to open it tomorrow and share it with you guys tomorrow about the different blades that we have and why they put certain blades on certain clippers. Just for an example, like they talk about a balding clipper, which does not have an adjustable blade. It's usually a magnetic motor because it cuts faster than a pivotal motor. It's ideal for quick precision cutting with minimal effort. And then the blade size, it's full across as opposed to some of the ones that are used for fading. And so it also has the way that the blade is curved in the back. So I'll tell you about that stuff tomorrow. So do we have any questions? No questions? Okay, so don't forget to do your homework. Okay, you guys need to get your homework done. Take a picture of the first page, send it in. I need to make sure I put everybody on the roll sheet when we get done here, but make sure that you have it sent in and so you can get your 6 hours. Okay, so have a good evening and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.